So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover the entire day's current affairs within 30 minutes. Now, just watching this lecture would be job half done because just after watching it, you need to revise these current affairs as well because you need to retain these current affairs in your memory. So revision helps in that regard. Now, you can revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us, and these notes are shared on our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Okay then, let's begin today's discussion. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. Okay, so daily current affairs, 25th June 2025, Wednesday, and here is the list. Okay, now today's newspaper, both Indian Express and the Hindu newspaper, they were not that heavy when it comes to current affairs or civil services related news. Okay, they were not that heavy. Only 3 news items were of extreme significance for us civil services aspirants, and that is why we are going to focus only on these 3 news items. Okay, because other news items are not relevant for civil services or UPSC. Okay, now let's take a look at this list. So number 1 on this list is emergency of 1975. See, today, June 25, marks the 50th anniversary of one of the darkest periods in India's history, and that is the emergency, national emergency of 1975. It was one of the darkest period of India's democracy. Okay, so we'll talk about this. Then, because it's the 50th anniversary of this event, okay. The news item number 2 is Wegovy, the weight loss drug. Recently, a pharmaceutical company announced that they are going to release an anti-obesity drug, a medicine that helps in weight loss, and that is called Wegovy. Okay. Now, this news is not that important for us, but what is important for us to know is what is the science behind this drug, this medicine? How does it helps human body to lose weight? Okay, the science, the name of some of the hormones, all of that is important for us. Therefore, we are going to focus on that when it comes to this news item. Okay, and then number 3 news item is emergency procurement mechanism for defense. Now, by the way, this emergency has no linkage with emergency of 1975. This emergency procurement mechanism is basically a mechanism through which India's armed forces can buy or procure weapons and weapon systems quickly by bypassing the bureaucratic hurdles. They can quickly replenish their weapon stock through this emergency procurement powers or mechanism. Okay, so this is that. This is related to India's defense preparedness. So we'll focus on this. And what is this emergency procurement mechanism? Okay. So these are the 3 news items that we shall zero in our attention on. Let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number 1, and that is emergency of 1975. Okay. Now hear me out carefully because you need to know a little bit of background story to understand why Indira Gandhi government in 1975 proclaimed national emergency. You see, the thing is that, well, there were these elections of 1971. And Indira Gandhi used to fight elections from Rai Bareli constituency of Uttar Pradesh. Her rival was Raj Narayan. Okay, Indira Gandhi won the elections. Okay, Indira Gandhi's party also won the elections. She formed the government. She became the prime minister. But later, Raj Narayan revealed that in Rai Bareli, Indira Gandhi was involved in electoral malpractices, corrupt electoral practices. She won the elections against him by using fraudulent means. By fraud. Okay, so he filed an election petition in the High Court. The Allahabad High Court ruled in favor of Raj Narayan. The judgment came on June 12th, 1975. So the elections happened in 1971, but 4 years later, the judgment of Allahabad High Court came out, and the Allahabad High Court judgment agreed with Raj Narayan, and the Allahabad High Court convicted Indira Gandhi of corrupt electoral practices. Now, Indira Gandhi was convicted. Therefore, there were grounds for Indira Gandhi to be disqualified as the member of parliament. And if she gets disqualified as the member of parliament, she can no longer be the prime minister. So now it was up to the president of India to disqualify Indira Gandhi's membership of the parliament, and then she would be disqualified as prime minister. This was the background. Now, the only way Indira Gandhi can survive and stay prime minister was if there is national emergency in India. Because if there is national emergency in India, then you get an extension. The government gets an extension of 1 year. Your government can remain in power even though your term has expired, for 1 more year. Okay, so people allege that Indira Gandhi took this decision to basically extend her prime ministership because, well, she was disqualified as prime minister by Allahabad High Court. So this judgment came in June 12th. On June 25th, President of India proclaimed national emergency. And we all know that the President of India is bound by the aid and advice of Council of Ministers and Prime Minister. So Prime Minister Indira Gandhi advised President to proclaim national emergency. President proclaimed national emergency, and then Indira Gandhi got 1 more year's extension. Nobody could remove her from her prime ministership, despite the judgment given by Allahabad High Court. Now, this basically led to a lot of protests in the country, a lot of problems, lot of protests were there. Okay, people were up in arms, people were up in streets to protest against this decision. Okay, so Indira Gandhi's government, using national emergency, passed various draconian laws through which she could arrest her political opponents, put them in jail, and a lot of things happened during that period. That is why it is known as the darkest chapter of India's democracy, or the history of India's democracy. Alright? The thing is that this national emergency was proclaimed using all the legal means. Indira Gandhi did not violate any law. Okay? She followed the law while proclaiming national emergency. So no law was violated for proclaiming national emergency. Yet, after proclamation of national emergency, various democratic rights, democratic privileges that all citizens have, well, they were violated under the guise of national emergency. Okay? So this is the background. Now you'll understand certain things about national emergency. Alright? So let's talk about this. Okay? So emergency of 1975. Okay? So this was the famous case called Raj Narayan versus Indira Gandhi. Okay? The judgment of Allahabad High Court. This judgment came in June 12th, 1975. Okay. Now, as per this judgment, Indira Gandhi stands disqualified. Her prime ministership should be revoked. Okay. And a new government or a new prime minister would have come. Okay. But she could have stayed if she proclaims national emergency. Now, under Article 352 of the Constitution, if India is threatened by war, external aggression, or internal disturbance, any internal disturbance, okay, in these cases, the president can proclaim national emergency. When national emergency is proclaimed, well, the central government gets some special powers, some extra powers to handle India during this national emergency. Okay, most of your fundamental rights are suspended during this national emergency period. The independence that state governments have, well, they are taken away. Okay, now India no longer remains a federal country. India is a unitary country. Central government can give directions to state governments and state governments have to follow them. Till the time national emergency is in place, state governments are nothing but agents of central government. Extraordinary powers are given to the central government, and Indira Gandhi's government used those extraordinary powers to do her willing. Okay, so this is the thing. Now, the thing is that whatever Indira Gandhi did till national emergency, basically what I want to say is that national emergency was proclaimed using all legal means. No law was violated while proclaiming national emergency. Okay, everything was legal. First of all, Article 352 said that national emergency can be proclaimed, and Article 352, our constitution, gives the grounds for national emergency. Article 352 said that if there is war, external aggression, that means attack by an enemy, Pakistan or China or anyone, okay, or internal disturbance. The constitution mentioned these terms, internal disturbance. You can proclaim national emergency. Now, who will decide whether there is internal disturbance or not? Okay, nobody can decide that. It is up to the president, and president, by president we mean prime minister. So, internal disturbance was declared, national emergency was declared, okay, proclaimed. So, Our constitution clearly allowed internal disturbance as valid grounds for national emergency. This was done by Indira Gandhi. Plus, you know what happened? Well, Indira Gandhi, she was the Prime Minister. She advised the President to proclaim national emergency. And her cabinet was unaware of this fact. Her cabinet did not know that national emergency is being proclaimed. Indira Gandhi first advised the President, President proclaimed national emergency, then after proclamation, Indira Gandhi announced this to her cabinet. Though, technically speaking, President is bound by the aid and advice of Council of Ministers. But in this case, the Prime Minister gave the advice of proclaiming national emergency without even consulting her cabinet. Her cabinet got to know about this through news. Okay? The thing is, this was also perfectly legal. Because Rule 12 of Government of India, Transaction of Business Rules. Okay? These rules are, transaction of business rules are basically rules through which government will do its job. These are those rules which specify how, which minister should do what to do this. All these rules are there. Under Rule 12, well, it was permissible that Prime Minister can directly approach the President, advise him to implement a decision. The President will implement a decision, and a day later, the Prime Minister can put that matter to the notice of Cabinet and get their signatures. That is allowed. Okay. So Indira Gandhi did that. So everything was legal. And under Article 352, emergency was proclaimed. Everything was legal. Yet, what followed was the darkest chapter of India's democracy. Okay? Despite using legal means, you did certain bad anti-democratic things. Okay? I'll give you some of the examples of the anti-democratic things. First of all, you need to know this, that during national emergency, all your fundamental rights are suspended. Though that was changed after an amendment to the constitution, but back then when Indira Gandhi was in power, well, your fundamental rights are suspended. So government can arrest you and you cannot even approach the courts that I'm being unlawfully detained. Your fundamental rights are suspended. Federalism is suspended. Now states are just agents of government. Plus during this time, to basically punish her political opponents, those people who were protesting against Indira Gandhi, they were put in jail. And for that, Indira Gandhi's government came out with some draconian laws. One famous law was MISA, Maintenance of Internal Security Act. Okay, MISA. Now this MISA law was a draconian law. Under this, no fundamental rights were, respected, and Government of India basically did not even allow the judicial review on MISA Act. Many people were arrested under this. Okay, so these draconian things happened. Later, when emergency was over, Shah Commission was formed to basically investigate what all wrongful things were done during emergency, and Shah Commission found out really bad things. Many innocent people were put in jail and a lot of bad things were happening back then. Okay, yet these things happened because national emergency was in play. Now this national emergency continued till 1977. Okay, so from 75 to 77, this national emergency continued. And because of this national emergency, Indira Gandhi became so unpopular, that when elections took place in 1977, she lost, her party lost. And a new government came to power, that was the Janata Party government. Okay, they came to power, and their popularity, the reason for their popularity, Janata Party's popularity was, the reason was their opposition against emergency. Therefore, people supported them and they came to power. And the first thing they did was, well, amend the constitution so that it becomes very difficult to proclaim national emergency again. Okay, so the Janata Party government, as soon as they came to power, well, they passed 44th Constitutional Amendment Act, and under this act, Article 352 was amended and many important changes were made. Okay, so important changes made in the constitution which still exist. Clear? So before 44th Amendment, it was very easy for Prime Minister to proclaim emergency. But after 44th Amendment, now it's difficult. Okay, what were the changes? First of all, well, under Article 352, it was said that the Prime Minister cannot alone advise the President to proclaim national emergency. The President should receive a written note from the Cabinet. Not like Indira Gandhi, who informed her Cabinet later. No. A written note from Cabinet should be given to the President. Only then the President can proclaim national emergency. So at least some safeguard would be there. One person won't be given that many dictatorial powers like Indira Gandhi was given. Okay. So Cabinet given statutory recognition. So Cabinet, the word Cabinet was introduced in the Constitution. Earlier, only Council of Ministers, this word is there in the Constitution. The word Cabinet is not in the Constitution. But after 44th Amendment Act, Cabinet word was added in Article 352 of the Constitution. Okay? Then, you remember I told you that the grounds for proclaiming national emergency were war, external aggression and internal disturbance. Well, internal disturbance was completely deleted. And instead of internal disturbance, armed rebellion was mentioned. That if there is an armed rebellion, there are some terrorist groups in India, then only grounds exist that you can proclaim national emergency. You can't say that internal disturbance is there. Now, internal disturbance is a very vague word. Okay, anything can be internal disturbance. Therefore, internal disturbance was replaced by armed rebellion. Then, earlier, what happened was that if Prime Minister feels that, well, emergency should be proclaimed because there are valid grounds in India that require such an action. Okay. Well, that action of the Prime Minister or the President could not be questioned in any court of law. If Prime Minister thinks that there is internal disturbance, there is internal disturbance. The courts cannot inquire into this decision. Okay, the courts can't say we want to investigate whether there is actual internal disturbance or not. So there was no power of judicial review when it comes to national emergency. Well, 44th Amendment Act introduced this power. Okay. Then some other changes. Look, in the earlier constitution, if there is national emergency, the President will proclaim national emergency. Then after 2 months, this national emergency should be passed by Parliament. Okay? Only then national emergency can continue beyond 2 months. It needs to be passed by both houses of Parliament. By simple majority, but passed. Okay? Now, under 44th Amendment Act, first of all, you reduce this time from 2 months to 1 month. And you said that both houses of Parliament should give this approval by at least 2/3 majority. Not simple majority, 2/3 majority. Only then the emergency can extend beyond 1 month. Okay, this was made. So you see, 44th Amendment Act is making proclamation of emergency little difficult. Okay. Then earlier all fundamental rights were suspended during emergency. Today, after 44th Amendment Act, it is said that yes, all fundamental rights are suspended except Article 20, which is rights under arrest. Okay. I mean, no double jeopardy and all that. Conviction, right with respect to conviction of offences, and right to life. These rights are still there. Clear? Plus 44th Amendment Act repealed some draconian laws, like MISA was repealed by Janata Party. Clear? So this was the case. Plus many things were done during emergency. 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act was passed during the period of emergency. And this 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act is also known as the mini constitution because so many amendments were made to the constitution by Indira Gandhi during emergency. During emergency, a 39th amendment was also passed. You know what 39th amendment said? That no question shall be raised with respect to the election of Prime Minister, President, Vice President. So even if there are fraudulent means through which Prime Minister won the elections, nobody can question that in any court of law. That was 39th Amendment. So 44th Amendment Act repealed that also. You still can question Prime Minister's election. Indira Gandhi was basically trying to solidify her position so that nobody can question her elections in future. Okay, that was the case, and many more things were done. So it was definitely a very dark chapter in India's history. All right. Okay, that would be all. Now let's quickly shift to second topic of the day, and that is Wegovy, the weight loss drug. Okay. Now look, there is a particular component, a particular chemical called semaglutide. Now the best part about semaglutide is that it affects your endocrine system or your hormones in such a way that, well, you are protected from diabetes. So basically semaglutide was a chemical that was given to people who suffered from diabetes. Okay, but later further research was done on this chemical semaglutide, and it was found out that semaglutide can also be used for people who are fighting against obesity. It can also be used as an anti-obesity drug, because obesity is a big problem. You might say that what kind of problem is obesity? A person is just fat, okay? But obesity is a big problem because obesity is the cause behind so many other diseases. Heart diseases, kidney diseases, liver diseases. Obesity is the root cause, right? So to fight against obesity is very important for all of us. Now you can try exercises, diet and all that, but now scientists have said that you can also take this medicine. You can also take semaglutide to reduce your weight and fight against obesity. Okay, so earlier semaglutide was used against diabetes only, but now semaglutide is also being used against what? Anti-obesity. Okay, so this is the thing. Okay, so let's talk about it. Okay, and we'll try to understand the science behind it. Why semaglutide is effective against diabetes and obesity? What is the science behind this? Okay, so look, semaglutide, the magic medicine. Okay, now semaglutide was used for fighting diabetes. Okay, so there was this company which made a medicine out of semaglutide. The name of the medicine was Ozempic. Okay, and Ozempic medicine contained semaglutide. Ozempic medicine was used for type 2 diabetes. Now this semaglutide is being used again in a medicine called Wegovy. Okay, so remember, Ozempic and Wegovy are just brand names. The salt in those medicines is semaglutide only. Okay, and this Wegovy is used as anti-obesity drug. People struggling with obesity. Okay, so this is the thing. Now, what is so special about semaglutide? Let's talk about this. Okay, we'll try to understand the science behind this. So semaglutide is basically a glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist. Now, what is the meaning of that? Look, glucagon-like peptide receptor, GLP-1, is basically a hormone in your body. Okay, it is basically a hormone in your body. This hormone is very important. Why? This hormone actually promotes insulin secretion in your body. So when this hormone is in high quantities in your body, insulin, another hormone, is secreted. Now insulin is very important. Okay, insulin is extremely important to reduce your blood sugar levels. Now you understand why it was used for type 2 diabetes. Okay, so this semaglutide basically mimics the actions of GLP-1 hormone. That is why it is known as GLP receptor agonist. Okay, so your body has a hormone GLP-1 which helps secretion of insulin. Insulin helps in reducing blood sugar levels, right? Now, many people who are suffering from diabetes do not have their own natural GLP-1. So they take semaglutide because this semaglutide acts or mimics the actions of GLP-1, which leads to secretion of insulin. Blood sugar levels come down. That is why semaglutide is prescribed for type 2 diabetes. The drug is called Ozempic. Okay. Then it is recently found out that semaglutide, this GLP-1 hormone, is also useful for fighting against obesity. Okay. That is why Wegovy is launched. Now both these medicines can be taken in the form of injections subcutaneously or in the form of oral medicine. Okay. Now let's talk about the science behind this. So what is so special about semaglutide? Okay. Well, semaglutide acts like GLP-1. GLP-1 leads to more insulin release, okay, which reduces your blood sugar levels. Now there is another hormone in your body, okay? If insulin reduces blood sugar levels, glucagon increases blood sugar levels, okay? So this GLP-1 increases insulin production, reduces glucagon production, okay? So your blood sugar levels remain controlled. Then this GLP-1 slows gastric emptying. Your stomach empties out quickly and then you feel hungry. This GLP-1 slows that process. So you always feel that your stomach is full and you feel less hungry. Plus this GLP-1 also attacks brain's appetite center. So there are some circuits in your brain which make you feel hungry. GLP-1 blocks those circuits. So you don't feel hungry, so you don't eat, right? Plus, further research has been done and it has been found out that semaglutide not only works against obesity and type 2 diabetes, it also helps in cardiovascular system and renal systems protection. Renal system is related to kidneys, cardiovascular system is related to heart. So it further protects your cardiovascular and renal system. But though research is incomplete, yet preliminary findings of those research papers have claimed that it is also helpful in cardiovascular and renal systems health. Here, that's the science behind this. So remember this GLP-1 hormone, glucagon-like peptide receptor agonist. Okay, that's about it. And now let's quickly shift to, well, emergency procurement mechanism for defense. Okay, emergency procurement mechanism for defense. Now look, the thing is that defense companies, or I shouldn't say defense companies, our armed forces require weapons, right? And for that, they need to have some budget. Now, the thing is that in the past, weapons procurement has been like, there have been a lot of cases of corruption with respect to weapons procurement, okay? Therefore, whenever armed forces have to procure weapons, they have to make sure that the process is transparent. Now, in ensuring that transparency, a lot of time is taken, a lot of files have to be moved, a lot of bureaucratic red tape has to be crossed, which slows down the process of weapons procurement. Okay, plus there are many other requirements, like the government has said, Ministry of Defense has said that the weapons that Indian armed forces would procure should contain some Indian component also. The entire component shouldn't be foreign, some Indian component. So to ensure that some Indian component is there, a lot of inspections have to take place, a lot of transparency meetings have to take place. So the entire process is delayed, okay? And the armed forces do get frustrated because of that, because they make orders, but the weapons are delivered to them very late, because we have to make sure that there is no corruption, plus all the requirements are being met, okay? Now, armed forces have complained every time that this entire process is very hectic, a lot of bureaucracy is involved, bureaucratic red tape is involved, file work is involved. So this is not good for India's defense preparedness. Therefore, Indian government has come out with this emergency procurement mechanism. Under this, 15% of defense budget can be used by armed forces to procure weapons they want quickly, and they don't have to follow this entire bureaucratic process. They can bypass this entire bureaucratic process to procure important weapons. Now, the government has come out with this mechanism so as to ensure our preparedness, defense preparedness, our readiness to fight another war. And this readiness has come to light, especially post-Operation Sindoor. Post-Operation Sindoor, everyone has realized how important defense preparedness is, right? Therefore, armed forces should also be allowed to procure weapons quickly, bypassing this entire file work, okay? And for that, they have been given this mechanism, these powers, that 15% of their budget can be used to procure these weapons quickly under emergency procurement mechanism, okay? This is the thing. Clear? So let's talk about it. So emergency procurement mechanism for defense, all right? Now, look, you need to know certain things about defense budget, okay? So defense budget is completely under the control of Ministry of Defense, all right? Now, the defense budget can be divided into three parts, okay? capital defense budget, revenue defense budget, pensions, the budget that is spent in giving pensions to the veterans. Okay. Now, capital budget is that budget which is used to buy weapons, advanced weapons, normal weapons. Revenue budget is that budget that is spent on salaries of defense personnel, that is basically spent on food requirements, fuel requirements, operational requirements. That is revenue budget. Okay. And then there are pensions. Now, as you can see, the maximum chunk of our defense budget gets spent in revenue, and armed forces are left with only 26% to buy weapons. Plus, in this also, there is a lot of bureaucratic delay. Okay, so it is natural for armed forces to get frustrated. Plus, armed forces say that this hampers our operational readiness, this hampers our preparedness. Tomorrow, if enemy attacks us, we should be prepared. We can't be prepared through this. So they have been requesting the government to, first of all, increase this capital part of the defense budget. Second, reduce this bureaucratic delay. Now, government has found out a way to reduce this bureaucratic delay, and government has said that each of these armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, can spend 15% of their capital budget through emergency procurement mechanism. Okay. The other 85% should follow the similar tedious, file work laden bureaucratic process to procure weapons. But they can use 15% of their capital budget to get weapons quickly. And army is using it readily. Okay. So army is basically using it readily. Clear? Now, basically recently army has given orders, 13 orders for drones, okay, missiles, air defense systems, a lot under emergency procurement mechanism. One more thing. If emergency procurement mechanism is basically there to bypass the normal procurement mechanism, the question is, what is the normal procurement mechanism? Okay. So, the normal procurement mechanism is Defense Procurement Program, okay, Defense Procurement Program 2020. This Defense Procurement Program has many rules which have to be followed for procurement, okay. Now remember one more thing. The entire procurement of defense equipment is done by Defense Acquisition Council. This Defense Acquisition Council is under Ministry of Defense, and its chairman is also Union Minister of Defense, currently Rajnath Singh. Okay. In Defense Acquisition Council, chairman is Defense Minister, and then there are service chiefs, CDS, Chief of Defense Staff, Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Naval Staff, Chief of Air Staff. Okay. They are also there, and collectively they take decisions with respect to procurement, which weapons to buy and which not. But this Defense Acquisition Council has to follow these rules. Clear? But under emergency procurement mechanism, you can completely bypass this. But you can only bypass this for only 15% of your budget. Okay? So this is the thing. Currently, our defense forces do suffer from this problem. First of all, very little money is there for capital acquisition. Okay, capital budget is very small. The other is this DPP is basically quite problematic, quite delayed, okay, quite hectic, quite tedious. All right, so this is the thing. All right then. With that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But I say this every time, it will add more value if you revise this lecture as well. So please do not forget to do that. And I will see you next time with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.